I love peaty, smoky, flavor-infused Islay Scotch whiskies. My top 5 are sitting right behind me, and I can't wait to share them with you. Let's do this. Welcome to Whisky Riffs. I'm Kevin, and I'm excited for today's episode because I'm going to share with you my favorite category of Scotch whiskey. Islay, peated, smoky, flavor-infused Scotch. The top 5 that I've picked have just a few requirements. They have to be from Islay, or else this is a silly episode, top 5 Islay whiskeys that aren't from Islay. No, they're from Islay. They have to be peated. Not every Scotch whiskey that comes off the island of Islay is peated, but this group is. And they have to be affordable. I didn't want the expensive whiskeys from Islay. There are plenty that are the $300 to $400 range, but I wanted to make sure that these were affordable. They're all under $100, and some even a lot under $100. And also, they have to be very accessible. You have to be able to get them. Why bother to give you a review of whiskeys that you can't even get? So these should be available. They're widely distributed, and if you can't get them, I'd like to know in the comments. But most of you should be able to get these whiskeys in the areas that you live. I'm going to present these priced from lowest to highest, and I'm going to give you my top pick for if you're going to buy just one of these whiskeys, which one you should try first. And if you stick around to the very end, I have an alternate whiskey, a 6th, that I love a lot. It's not as accessible, you may have trouble getting it, but it's still affordable, and I think it's worth your time and effort. So with that said, let's get to it. We'll start with Ardbeg 10. Ardbeg is one of my favorite distilleries, and the 10 is the one that sets the tone for the Ardbeg peated whiskeys. It's non-chill filtered, and it's bottled at 46% ABV, and it's priced from around $50 to $60 in most areas. Now, when you look at this whiskey, you can see it's pretty light. A lot of Islay whiskeys are going to be light unless they're cast in something like a sherry cask, because it's pretty damn cold on the island of Islay most of the year round, and you just don't get a lot of darkness from the wood penetration. What you do get, though, are the signature notes from an Ardbeg peated whiskey. You get that campfire nose. That's the signature for me when I'm nosing or tasting Ardbeg. You get the brininess. You get kind of like smoked meats like bacon or ham, peppery on the nose. But there's a sweetness down in there too. When you taste it, I like describing it as you're having a campfire out on a rocky beach of the cold, windy Islay shore, and this is the beach, this is the smoke, this is the fire, and maybe you're cooking something like a ham. I think that just kind of wraps up the flavor profile for this. It's really delicious. It's uncomplicated. There are a lot more complicated flavors in Islay whiskeys, but I think this has such nice notes, really, really down-to-earth flavors. There's just enough sweetness there to make it appealing without overwhelming your senses with floweriness or fruitiness. It is the core flavor range of Ardbeg. All the Ardbeg expressions start with this and build on it. So this is a great experience to start off with if you've never had an Ardbeg before. And Ardbeg is one of my favorite distilleries, so if you haven't tried them yet, you really need to jump into that. Let's continue on. We've got a lot to taste here. Next up, a favorite. If you've heard anything about Islay whiskey, you've probably heard of this one. Laphroaig 10. Laphroaig is the first Islay whiskey that I've ever tasted. It was given to me as a gift by a friend, and it set me on this path of Islay smoky, peaty whiskeys. It's 43% ABV, and it is a much different beast than most other Islay whiskeys. It's priced from $50 to $60. I've even seen it as low as $40. So around you may be able to get this one pretty cheap. They also have a cask strength version of this that's really great, but I wanted to give you the entry-level one as a more affordable option. If you do like this one, the cask strength just bumps everything up several notches. But do double check what you're getting, because the cask strength will give you a lot more than 43% ABV, and it's going to give you a bigger hit. Also, you may find the Laphroaig 10 sold in a UK version, which is only 40% ABV, and it's also smaller bottle. This one's 750 milliliters in the US. In the UK, it's 700 milliliters or 770 centiliters. So just make sure you're getting what you expect, and let's pour this. Much like the Ardbeg, this is a lighter color, but has a more amber tone to it than Ardbeg. It has to do with the casking and the way they're treating this one. Gives you a little more depth of color. Now the Laphroaig 10 is that whiskey that you hear about when people say, aren't all Scotch whiskeys like iodine or like licking a Band-Aid? Certainly not. That's not the definition of Scotch whiskey. That is often the definition of Laphroaig 10. So when I nose this whiskey, I don't get campfire so much as I get that iodine nose. And even though it's a lower ABV than the Ardbeg 10, I do get more hints of attack on my nose. I think the peatiness is stronger, and it has more fruit notes in it, actually. You have to kind of get past that iodine, that smoky and peaty hit that you first get, and you will find a lot of flavors in here. Make sure you dig down. There's a lot in this whiskey to love. Yeah, the flavor profile of this is really much more complex than the Ardbeg 10. But it may not be your cup of tea because it is more abrasive. It is more iodine. It is more medicinal. But there is so much down in there. When I first got this many, many years ago, and I sat with it and just was amazed after drinking some pretty low-priced bourbons, how many different times I could go back into this glass and find different flavors and beautiful notes in there, and something that I could experience different every time. You have to warm your palate up to the peatiness of it, to the little bit of edge that some people don't like, but may just be your cup of tea. But there is a lot of smoke, and there is a lot of peat, and it is more intense than you will see from pretty much any of these whiskeys, because I think it's a unique Laphroaig note that you get. This whiskey has so much potential if you get past that gatekeeper of iodine and smoke. My third whiskey in this list is Port Charlotte, heavily peated, Islay single malt, 10-year. This whiskey is from Bruichladdich, and they love to divide their whiskeys into different groups. The Port Charlotte group has non-peated and peated variants. This is the 10-year, and they call it the heavily peated because it is heavily peated. But remember, peat and smoke aren't one single flavor. As I told you with the Ardbeg 10 and the Laphroaig 10, both 10-year peated whiskeys, but very different flavor profiles. Now the Port Charlotte took me a while to get introduced to this whiskey, but after I found it, I really love a lot about it. Port Charlotte costs between $60 and $70. It's also 50% ABV, so you are getting a lot of bang for that buck. I love the higher end of the ABV spectrum. There's more proof to it. I typically like the whiskey more. So right there, this whiskey is selling me just on that point alone. And you have to watch it because it does hit you in the nose if you go down as deep as you would with a 43% or 46% ABV. This whiskey is special also because of the way it's cast. It's got first and second fill American used casks, and it's got a French wine casking also. When they say first and second fill, they mean it's probably an ex-bourbon cask, but the first fill of their use, and then a second fill of their use. So right away, this nose is very nice. It's much calmer than the Laphroaig and doesn't have the campfire notes of the Ardbeg. There's more sweetness to it. I'm getting some caramel notes on there. And all these are malted whiskeys, so you'll always get that little malt note, but because they're peated also, that kind of takes over. So you don't get as much as you would from, let's say, a Highland Scotch. Even though the French wine cask isn't a majority of the casking, I think it's only around the 20 to 25% range of the cast time for this whiskey, it is giving some extra notes there that you're not getting from the other two 10 years. I'm getting a citrus on the nose. The sweetness is a little bit honey-like. And the flavors I'm getting some chocolate. I'm getting some nice ripe fruits. A lot of sweetness that is not in either of the other whiskeys that I've already reviewed. If you use a second fill cask, now you're talking about it was already used for bourbon, then it was already used once for a Scotch, and it's used a second time for Scotch. You're getting less of that bite, less of that oak spice that's kind of attacking you. Plus, I think Bruichladdich somehow makes their peated whiskey just a little more approachable than other peated whiskeys. Really nice, just a beautiful, beautiful whiskey. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I'm a big fan of this whiskey. It's the Ardbeg Uigeadail. This is a little different than the Ardbeg 10 because it has a sherry cask influence. The Uigeadail is a little pricier. It's in the $65 to $75 range. Right away, when you look at this pour of the whiskey, it is definitely darker. It definitely has more depth of color to it. This is the sherry influence. You can see that right away on the color. It beats all of them right off the bat. It's non-chill filtered. It's 54.2% ABV, which is higher than even the Port Charlotte. So this is pretty much a cask strength whiskey. Yeah, immediately when you stick your nose in this thing, you get the sweetness from sherry finished whiskeys. There's still that peat, but it's not nearly as much a hit as the Ardbeg 10. There's more sweetness, there's more raisins, there's more honey, maybe some raspberries in there, but you still got that little campfire underneath. A little bit of citrus and some definite brine in this. But wow, what a different experience. So if you've tasted these together, you're gonna immediately taste the Ardbeg campfire smoke. You're gonna taste the cooked meats like the bacon or the ham, and you're gonna taste that brininess. But you're also gonna get this wash of sweetness that comes through with the sherry casking. I'm getting more dark chocolate, like dark chocolate covered raisins, toffee notes, some nuttiness to it. The finish is long, there's cherries in there. It's a really lovely note. One of my favorite whiskeys of all time because it has both sides of the coin. It has the peaty, smoky, challenging notes, and also that sweetness and that lovely nose, which kind of deceives you into thinking that you're not going to get too much of a peat hit when you drink it, but you are going to get the Ardbeg signature notes in this whiskey. I could go on for days. I have other videos about this, and I have other videos about a lot of these, so I'm going to link those in the description below. And if you have different comments or different notes or any thoughts about any of these whiskeys, I'd love to hear those in the comments too. I always want to hear your experience with these peated whiskeys. All right, running out of room here, but I've got at least one more whiskey and my alternate, so stick around for that. The fifth one on this list is a whiskey that I'm sure you know about. If you've ever seen a video of Nick Offerman sitting sipping whiskey in front of a fireplace, he'll be sipping a Lagavulin. This is a Lagavulin 16. It is an Islay Scotch whiskey that is well known, well respected, and well worth being respected. It's 43% ABV, which is a little low on the scale of ABVs for the price that you're paying for this, which can be from $70 to $95 or maybe even a little more depending on where you are. But you're paying a bit for the name, you're paying for the celebrity of it, and you're also paying for a whiskey that is 16 years old. So where the rest of the group here are 3 10-year-olds and 1 no age statement, this is the one that has the most age to it, the most time in the barrel. And often this is seen as the quintessential Islay Scotch whiskey. Like the Uigeadail, this whiskey has spent time in an ex-sherry cask. You can see the color is darker. You can see that it has some age to it. So you're getting both color from the sherry casking and from the age of the whiskey. Certainly with Scotch, more of this is from the sherry influence than it is the age, because Scotch takes a long time to darken up in their colder climates. The notes on this immediately, whether I'm being influenced by the actual number on the label or not, smell older. They smell of the influence of the oak. I can get that little spiciness from the oak along with the peat that's there. It's a pretty mild peat. Of course, we're also at 43%, so it's tied with the lowest, like the Lefroy. I'm getting the maltiness, I'm getting the plums, I'm getting that sweetness There's some citrus notes there, but they're very gentle, they're very light. The darker fruits are there, like plums and raisins. Like I said, it just smells ideal for a Scotch. Always a treat. I always forget how much I really like Lagavulin 16. And the flavors back up the nose. You've got the peatiness, you got oak spice, you've got that little bit of smoke in there. There's some brine, and then as you let it linger, you get that spiciness, but also the fruit flavors. They're not as strong as they are on the nose, but they're definitely there. With all these Islay whiskeys, my favorite part of them is that you can actually spend time nosing these whiskeys and discovering more and more. I'd love to hear in the comments what notes you get out of these whiskeys. You're gonna bring back memories of the things that are important to you, and this whiskey probably is gonna trigger some things like that. Yeah, I'd like to pull up a chair, sit in front of a fireplace, and enjoy a Lagavulin 16. That'd be a great afternoon for me. That's my top 5 whiskeys, but I have something else for you. I told you I'd pick the top whiskey out of this group that you should try first. And it may or may not surprise you. I don't know. If you think it's gonna be the Oogie Dal, it's really close. I mean, I would love to say that, but I think if you're going for Islay, if you're going for the pureness of an Islay whiskey, but if you're looking for something that's not as challenging as the iodine front end of Laphroaig 10, then I think you need to look at Port Charlotte, heavily peated, 10-year whiskey that I think Bruichladdich does a great job of managing the peat along with the flavors and giving you so much of what Islay is all about. It's got sweetness, it's got smoke, but it's got so much more depth in it. And I don't know, I think it's underrated. I don't think enough people have tried this whiskey. If you tried the Port Charlotte heavily peated, I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Let me know in the comments. It's really great whiskey as far as I'm concerned, and I want to know what you think. These are all great Islay whiskeys, and I hope you have tried at least one of them. Let me know which one's your favorite in the comments. I do have one more whiskey that if you haven't tried it, I really think it's a missed experience in the realm of Islay smoky peaty whiskeys. Let me grab that now. Still in the box. Of course it's tricky to open. I'm doing it on camera. It is the Ardbeg Corryvreckan. Corryvreckan can be a more expensive whiskey. It can be harder to find. It's priced at $85. It's also a cask strength whiskey, 57.1% ABV, non-chill filter, of course, at that level. Why would you chill filter? There's absolutely no reason for it. It has all the Islay notes and more. Grab a glass. Let's pour this bad boy. The Corryvreckan is a little darker. There's no age statement, but at 57.1% ABV, you're definitely going to get more intense whiskey. The name comes from a famous whirlpool that lies to the north of Islay. It's described by Ardbeg as a whiskey not for the faint of heart. Now, part of that's going to be the ABV. I mean, whenever you're sticking 57% and up ABV, you're going to kick someone's ass a little bit. Like the other Ardbegs, it has those signature notes. So the Ardbeg 10 filters way up through the Ardbeg line and gives you that same campfire, gives you the same cooked meat notes, but there's something a little different about this one. Dark chocolate, and the fruit notes are even darker, like black currants or like dark cherries. Of course, you get the brine there too. I really feel like I'm on an Islay beach with this one. Seaweed and the wind, the salty, briny air. The Corryvreckan is a real experience on the taste. So much pepper, so much flavor. If you like those peppery whiskeys, if you like that hit and that challenge in a whiskey, this is the beast for you. It lingers with the spice, but there's also like espresso notes. There's the brine and the seaweed and the smoke, but that sweetness there is somehow just pushing its way through all that challenging flavor profile. I'm definitely getting the dark chocolate too. It's part of the linger. So if you tried the rest of these and you haven't tried the Corryvreckan yet, I highly recommend this as an alternate for my top 5 Scotch Islay whiskeys. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like. It really helps spread this around YouTube and just sends the love for the effort that I put into these videos. I know it's really hard to see drinking 6 whiskeys as effort or such a struggle, but you know, I'm doing this for you. I'm drinking this much whiskey for you, the people. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you got something out of it. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, and until we meet in the next video, take care of yourself, take care of those people around you, and cheers. Fifth one on this list is the Ardbeg. No, I've already done 2 Ardbegs. It's not an Ardbeg.